this, you know, that's what it is to be a mom at 7 p.m. So, but which I'm sure everyone here can relate to. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me for this Montessori talk. I think it has been such a privilege for my child to be there. Just a little bit for everyone else to know, Rain was at Hatfield Montessori for a few years, and now he's in grade 1. The transition was a bit wobbly in the beginning. He couldn't understand why he can't play so much anymore. This is a difficult transition. However, because of the Montessori base, he has adjusted so beautifully. He's doing really well in grade 1. There are certain principles that were learned with the Montessori method that has only benefited him. And so, yeah, but I'm so thankful for everyone that you joined tonight. I'm going to see, Sean, I assume you enabled me to share my screen.
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. So now, where is my, oh dear, let me just see where my PowerPoint is. Okay, great. New share. Can everyone see that? Yes, no?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Why isn't it, oh, play, maybe that will help. There we go. Okay, great. Well, in terms of the topic tonight, and is my child on track? I thought I'd take a little bit of a different track that you might be maybe anticipating, because usually when we think, is my child on track? You start thinking developmental milestones, you start thinking, you know, anything that you could actually just Google online. And so I thought I wanted to make sure that this talk tonight was a meaningful one for everyone, and that perhaps you may be able to just think about your child a little bit differently in terms of what does on track really look like. My focus will be mostly on the psychological well-being of your child. So what you will Google, even I know Dowda, I don't know if she was online, her being a pediatrician, you can always ask her. I know if you want to know in terms of the physical milestones that need to be met with your child. I'm putting her out there. It's great to use the resources of the school and to find other people in the community who you can really draw from, which I really love about the Hatfield, the Montessori philosophy. So what does psychological well-being include? It includes, you know, emotional and mental wellness. Mental health in children includes the way they think and feel about themselves and how they perceive the world. So a major contributing factor to this perception about self and the world is the idea of attachment. I don't know if maybe I could have a show of hands or raised hands. How many of you know about attachment, have or thought about the concept of attachment? Or maybe even in the chat box, you can send a message. Don, you have, great. Maggie, perfect. So awesome. So that's why I'm going to, I only saw 2 people, but maybe there's more and my screen's not showing everybody. I want to unpack what the idea of attachment looks like. So I'm trying to give you a very basic attachment simplified version. It was originally developed by 2 theorists called John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, built on his basic research. He noticed, you know, where it came from is that he noticed that children, back in the day, children were dropped off in hospital and they were picked up by their parents weeks later, maybe months later, after they recovered from their illness. Right now, we would be horrified. We'd be like, what? Drop off my child at hospital and see them weeks or months later? Yes, that did happen back then. And he noticed the responses of these children. And these responses then formed his attachment theory. And he noticed that depending on how we are attached to our parents will determine how we will respond upon the reunion, as one would call, and Mary Ainsworth developed that. Attachment is very important because it develops a secure base, basically that internal groundedness about ourselves. A secure base also allows us to want to explore the world, be a lot more curious, and decrease anxiety. It also develops, we also develop internal working models. Basically, we, from our early relationships, determine how we view the world, how we think the world will respond to us in terms of our needs, and in response, how then we in turn respond to the world. So that was really important. So the second thing, okay, so Mary Ainsworth increased this theory and she spoke about different types of attachment. I see there's a chat that came on. I'm so sorry, but I can't seem to be able to get to it. This is my, okay. Sean, I'll leave the chat to you. And if there's anything I need to know along the way, please let me know. So there's basically 4 attachment styles we have. The gold prize or standard, which is going to be the focus of tonight's talk, is secure attachment. The ones that are considered insecure and unhealthier in a sense are called avoidance, ambivalence, or disorganized attachment. I put that there, but hopefully if you want to unpack the others a bit more and discover it, you can always, hopefully go back to this talk and then maybe do a little bit more research about it. But due to our time constraints today, I'm just going to focus on what does secure attachment look like. Oh, wait. Hello. I decided I'm going to add that in to help everyone. Okay. We'll unpack it a little bit then. So secure attachment, basically, there's really, here are some of the benefits. You can trust fairly easily. You're attuned to emotions. You can communicate your hurts quite easily and directly to the person without confusion. You generally then are able to be cooperative and flexible in your behavior in your relationship. If you're feeling anxious, if you have an anxious attachment or some people call it the anxious ambivalent attachment, you generally have a more sensitive nervous system. You struggle communicating your needs directly. This is mostly because your primary caregiver had mixed responses to you. Sometimes they were present, sometimes they were not present. So you actually had no idea whether this was the moment you would have your needs met or this is the moment you will experience rejection. So when you have this type of attachment, you tend to act out. There's a lot of acting out behavior. There's then insecure avoidance in terms of the simplified version. You believe that I'm okay, but you're not okay. And so then you start avoiding relationships to keep yourself safe. You become extremely self-reliant, and you can become more vulnerable when there is a big crisis. Avoidance, fearful, the other explanation for that is also called a disorganized attachment. Usually when you have this attachment style, you would find that there is trauma in your history, early childhood trauma. And what you'd find about the primary caregivers is that they would be more neglectful or absent or abusive. So when you tend to develop an attachment style that becomes more dependent in relationships, and then avoidance, dismissive. So you get extremely clingy or absolutely dismissive. You then would have a severe or strong fear of rejection, generally have a low self-esteem and high anxiety in relationships because you really struggle to understand the mind of the other. you really struggle to actually understand even your own mind. And so and you will find that children or even adults like this are quite dysregulated. So you kind of never know what you're going to get. So as you can see, there's a reason why tonight I would prefer to focus on the secure attachment, because that is what we're hoping for our children. Even if we can kind of connect with the other attachment styles, what's really lovely is that our brain is neuroplastic. So we're able to relearn and unlearn some old habits and relearn some really helpful connective ways of interacting with others. So let's say you feel like, oh, I haven't been the best parent at all. You know what? We can always shift. We can work on ourselves, and also then become so much more aware that we will respond differently to our child. So hopefully you can see it that way. So the benefits of secure attachment. An ability to regulate emotions, which is really important. We find that even if you're looking at recent research and you know in terms of the success of children of today, one of the major things is the ability to regulate their own emotions. You know, when you have a secure attachment, you're able to have a healthy expression of yourself because you have an accurate picture of who you are. You have a willingness to explore the world. You foster a curiosity and confidence in self, and you're able to ask for help. I think this is really underestimated sometimes, because we're in even society sometimes values independence and almost an isolated way of being. But you find that those who are able to connect, find a sense of belonging, and aren't afraid to ask for help, that is the mindset. That's a growth mindset, because you're not afraid of being corrected. You're not, you know, you're more open to the influence of others and the thinking of others while still being grounded in yourself. So yeah, you're not afraid to form new relationships because you have a general trust in the world. Wouldn't this be amazing for your own child? That when you look at them and you think about their future, sometimes we think about future in terms of achievements. That will come if they're able to regulate themselves, healthy expression of self, willingness to explore the world. Curiosity also extends to intellectual curiosity. They're able to engage with the world and not afraid to ask questions that might even ruffle the feathers of others, which is much needed, because that is how we, you know, we progress in the world at the end of the day, and you know, inventions come about by people willing to pioneer and go into a new space without fear. So the next step is then, how do you foster a secure attachment with your child? Because, you know, going through, okay, Angie, you've already told me what secure attachment looks like, the benefits to my child. If they have these things, they most likely are a little bit more on track. Well, then, you know, that's why this would be an important question to answer. One of them is having an authoritative parenting style. Not an authoritarian parenting style. They are two completely different things. So let me explain. I don't know if I decided to add that in. There we go. I like little visuals as well. So the authoritative image, hopefully you can see, you know, both parents and child are like, yeah. So usually if you have the authoritative parenting style, you are nurturing, you're responsive and supportive, and yet you're able to set firm limits. That means the type of parenting that you have is you manage your child's behavior by explaining the rules, discussing with them, being willing to dialogue and hear their thoughts out, and also then reasoning through with your child. The misconception that we may have is my child is young, they're only 2, and what will they understand? Children are incredible. They are able to understand everything that you are most likely telling them. The thing is, they just haven't developed the the verbal skills yet to express what they're actually understanding from you. So that is something I definitely want to clarify, that our children are intuitive. They are like sponges. They really see you clearly. So, and their point of view is when they feel like you are willing to engage and accept their perspective, you're basically setting up a model for them that they are important enough to hear. And why I say this matches with the Montessori method of teaching is, first of all, the play-based education, which is amazing, but also the fact that teachers don't call themselves teachers, they call themselves guides, which I love. I loved the fact that, you know, your child is respected in the environment, and all the guides are able to help them to navigate and think about the questions they're asking before giving an answer, so that they can see that they're able to negotiate and have greater confidence in being able to speak to an adult, as opposed to the other types of parenting, which contribute to the other attachment styles that I was talking about. Authoritarian, as opposed to authoritative, is where you believe that you're the boss, you're the final answer, and basically you're saying, you know, if you start saying, you have to do this because I said so, that's usually the more authoritarian stance. I know sometimes we as parents, we can be so tired by the negotiation, right? I totally understand that. However, that statement of you're going to do because I say so, whether you like it or not, immediately shuts down communication. And sometimes you might find that the meltdown becomes a little bit more epic. And then it becomes this little power struggle. You see this as a power struggle. So that is definitely something we're not aiming for. Neglectful, as you can see, what I love about this image is that it has, you know, you on your cell phone. The reason we can be so distracted by our cell phones and we don't think that it's being neglectful. But when your child is coming to you and they're excited to share about their day, and you have a screen that blocks you from making that eye contact, that is experienced as neglect. And so, because sometimes we think of neglect as malnutrition or, you know, the physical aspects of neglect. However, we can also engage in emotional neglect, and being distracted by electronics can be one of those. So it talks about permissive parenting here. So basically, you're a great parent in terms of being very relaxed. Your child, you are actually very warm. Your child can come to you. However, you don't monitor or your child's behavior. They can do anything they want to do. Interestingly enough, research finds that these children with permissive parenting tend to have greater impulsivity, greater rebelliousness, greater aggression, and lower interest in self-reliance and self-control. So if to allow a child to make their own decisions, you're actually harming them. A firm boundary is an important aspect. Overprotective parenting is when you're like that helicopter parent, where you basically, every decision they make, you want to be right there. What you're communicating to them unconsciously is that I don't trust that you can make the right decision, and that's why I have to step in and help you. This makes the child very doubtful about themselves. They start feeling insecure about their decision making, and then they become overly reliant on your direction before they feel confident enough to make their own decisions. If you had to forward this Imagine this is what they believe of the world. If someone harms them in the future, they may not believe that they have the strength or the voice to be able to respond. So it is important to be protective, but overprotective, where you micromanaging every aspect of their life, is actually quite harmful for your child. So the goal that we're working towards is more the authority. We hope to work towards the more authoritative stance in parenting, because that has been discovered to contribute to greater psychological well-being, especially in your children. So further, just further to fostering that secure attachment, be warm, nurturing, and attentive. And so sometimes we warm is important, because then does your child find you approachable, or do they tend to avoid you? And so sometimes it takes a little bit of reflecting in terms of, okay, how can I do this a bit better? What helped me along the way? Because sometimes with the Asian style, you can get very strict. And so what was really helpful just on a practical is to, just literally step on his level, make eye contact, and just be interested in what your child has to say. Be nurturing and attentive as well. So consistent responses. What is meant by consistent responses is that your child, one wants to hear, oh, I know what mom's going to say, but hopefully, or I know what my parents are going to say, or my caregiver is going to say, but not in a punitive way necessarily. Perhaps it is. Like, I know my mom's going to say, I'm not allowed any more sweets before bedtime. I'm sure my son will probably say that to you if you have to ask him what are but he's not confused about the reason why, what happened. We went through reasoning through tooth decay. We did some, like dental videos on what happened to your teeth. Don't worry, it wasn't the ones that are horrifying, but child-friendly dental videos. Just to help him to be more conscientious about what happens to your teeth before bedtime. But that's, I know I've literally digressed over there, but hopefully you see your child will know that every time I break a plate, for example, I know what mom's going to do. She's going to say, whoopsie, okay, let's clean up that plate. And what were you doing while you were holding that plate? Oh, I was running. Okay, maybe next time you shouldn't run with your plate to the dinner table. So, and your child will know that you're not going to have an explosive reaction towards them. You will most likely have a calm, consistent response. Have healthy expression of your own emotions. Sometimes I give myself a little bit of a time out when I am feeling overwhelmed, and and I know that I'm a little bit agitated or irritated. Then it becomes, okay, let me step away. So there's a modeling and able to express, I'm feeling quite agitated and irritated today. Not about you, it's about my work, but I'm worried that I'm going to let it out on you. So can you please give me 5 minutes? And so in that way, you are able to help your child name emotions accurately, because you're able to express it in yourself. But also, if they are going through something, name the emotion. If you see that they're sad, saying, hey, you're looking sad, you're looking, angry. The 5 basic emotions: anger, sadness, disgust, fear, and joy. I don't know if you watched the movie Inside Out. That's a really lovely movie to be able to unpack the development of emotions and how they become nuanced over time and they have become a little bit more complex as we go along. So that's also another side note if you just want to help your child with naming emotions, understanding emotions. The movie Inside Out is actually quite helpful. Play with your child. The children connect through play. They're able to tell you about their world and what they're going through playing with them. There are so many times that just after play with my child, on a downtime, at that moment, he tells me about what's going on inside him. And so I think it's such a special experience. And because it's once your child feels that play connection, it opens up so much more conversation. You usually won't be getting the usual, good, I'm fine, or what did you do at school today? Nothing. And I know when I speak to the teachers, he definitely didn't do nothing at all. So, play with your child. Build community and be open to input. Teachers are an invaluable source of input as they spend many hours with your child. What was really helpful was the partnership I had with the teachers. Sometimes really difficult input, like rain bit a child today. Okay. I'm like, oh no, I'm supposed to be a psychologist, and here's my child biting people. And I'm like, okay. But it was really helpful to get the input of the teachers and say, okay, what do you think I could do at home? What led to that behavior? And then I learned, my child was so agitated and so angry, he used a nonverbal response, and instead of telling the child, please leave me alone, he chose to bite. So we practiced at home what we do. We did role plays at home. What we do when we're feeling very upset, besides biting the other child. And so luckily there was no drawing of blood for the other child. I was so concerned for the other child as well. I was horrified about how the parents were going to think about my child. So, we all go through these things. However, I'm happy to say it was only that once. The role play helped. The teachers were very supportive in their input, and I was very grateful for that. So that's part of fostering the secure attachment, because even if they make a boo-boo at school, you're teaching your child we can work through it. So find out from the school, how does your child play? What is the general, I don't know what I wrote there, it's blocking my way, general temperament? Like, have they been to the peace table recently? If you don't know the peace table, important table to know about at Hatfield or any Montessori. And I put the biting in there because that was applicable to me. Are they easily frustrated? So then you know that you're keeping in mind the things that you can dialogue with your child and work through with your child at home. So great. So when do you need to seek professional input? Because sometimes we can be confused. Is this just normal behavior for my child, or is this something to be concerned about? When your child is unable to regulate their emotions and regularly has meltdowns or aggressive behavior, I would recommend seeking professional input. General, is excessively anxious, often reports having stomach aches or headaches or feeling, general feeling of unwellness. That is, and it's on a consistent basis. You're looking at least a month of having this experience. This is when I would recommend seeking professional input. Shows regressed behaviors such as enuresis and encopresis. Okay, so enuresis is when your child starts, they had gone through the milestones of becoming dry, night dry as well. And suddenly there is a complete regression, and they're tinkling in in different moments and unable to hold their bladder or forgetting. And it's more than a month. And even with training, that, you know, because you trained them before and you're still having difficulty, this is something to seek professional input about. Encopresis is more about soiling in your underwear, and so, or a fear of going to the bathroom, and, you know, it causes great difficulty. That is when you most likely should seek professional input. When you have constant interpersonal difficulty, when you find that your child is, you know, there's feedback about your child constantly getting into difficulty with different children. Perhaps, you know, what I find is it's not necessary. Therapy is really helpful to even develop social skills or different aspects you're concerned with. They might have a milder form of anxiety and you really want them to grow in that. Therapy is not necessarily because your child is completely, you know, has an extreme form of an illness. It's you can take a child to play therapy, even, you know, to develop those social skills. So great. So that's the end of my talk tonight. Hopefully that was on time, John. I was like, rushing through this, but hopefully I didn't go too fast. But if you have any, please, if you have any questions, then we can have responses. And thank you so much for taking out the time to listen to me tonight, and hopefully you found it helpful. How do I get out? Okay.
Angie, there were no questions in the chat, just a comment. Someone said that they didn't put their hand up because they were sitting in the dark and couldn't find how to put their hand up in the dark. So
Oh, no.
I think we did have more people
Okay.
who did know about attachment than it seemed.
Okay.
I think if anybody has questions, they must just unmute themselves and ask.
Sorry, I know I've kind of raced through that, and it was a bunch of information.
It was a lot of information, and I mean, I think I also learned a bit more from it. So you sort of feel like you probably know it, but you don't know it. There's always something else that you can pick up, another little tip. And I mean, I think that you help the children at school so much by coming in and just talking to them about emotions. I think this is such an important field that often gets neglected, that we don't talk enough about emotions to the children. And I think it's really worthwhile to do it both at school and at home. And thank you. There we have something in the chat. Somebody else also saying that it was indeed a lot of information. So we could have split it into a whole day workshop, I think. It's lovely.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, it's Jo. So I just wanted to ask if you are following the steps that you outlined in your presentation, that you notice a child is still persistently sad and upset throughout the day, what would you recommend to do and what steps to take in that situation?
There was quite a bit of feedback as you were talking. I heard the part about if your child is persistently sad. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, so if you are following open communication and the steps that you outlined in your presentation for a secure attachment, but you notice that a child is constantly upset and is down and doesn't have good self-esteem. So what can you do at school to basically encourage them and to support them through that? Like, how can we do that?
Are you wondering in terms of what the teachers can do when you mean by at school, or
yes, what teachers can do in that time then? when their
Okay.
parents aren't there to support them through that.
Oh, I see. Oh, Jojo. Ah, Joe.
Hi,
Foster care
Angie.
teacher Joe.
Yes, hi.
Okay. Sorry, it's been a while. So I'm like, Joe, I know this voice and I know you. Okay. So, so you're talking in terms of a containment in terms of a teacher and what you can do. May I ask you, what are you doing if you're okay with sharing?
Well, so if the child says they're sad, we ask them, hi, Rain. We
Sorry, I was
say,
muted and I can't hear you with the mic.
no, sorry. Okay. So we'll ask them, why are you sad? And then maybe if they're missing their mom, we just explain that mom's at work and she can't be with you right now, but we're all here for you and we love you. And just like offer a hug or whatever we can in the moment to help. So I'm not sure if that's...
No, that is really lovely because you're acknowledging the child's experience. You're saying that we're here to support you. And I don't know if you've then been able to, just feedback to the parents as well. I found that which I assume you have already, I find that your child is really consistently sad and something perhaps you need to look into. Because I guess to remember the role of the guide is you're there for a short containment space and you're there to a certain capacity, and we all have our parts to play, and so to be able to feedback that to their parents and they can explore that a little bit further within their home environment. So whatever you're doing at the moment sounds lovely.
Okay, thank you very much, Angie. I hope you're doing well.
I am, thank you. Okay, so the question in the chat box I see is, play therapy still helpful for a 10-year-old? Absolutely. Absolutely quite helpful. And what is the difference between art therapy, music therapy, besides traditional psychological sessions? Okay, so usually when you think about play therapy, it's usually done by a trained professional, whether it be a social worker or a psychologist. And so it is important that you do have those credentials behind the name, because then you may not actually be getting the therapy, the psychological therapy that you're looking for. So that is something important to look at. Is it different from art therapy? Sometimes play therapy includes art therapy, because then the therapist is able to determine, first of all, is art therapy appropriate for your child? Is it helpful for your child? Because you do go through a thorough assessment stage. For example, if a child has to come and see me, I usually tell parents it's a 4-stage process before we even get to the therapeutic input. Because the first 2 sessions are mostly about emotional assessment. And we usually have parents come in, and you want to be able to get a full history of your child, so that you have a holistic understanding and presentation of your child. So once you step into the therapeutic process, you're aware of many dynamics that can be influencing even the play therapy, or even the art that you use. So about music therapy, you also want to ensure that that the person, again, is trained in music therapy. And again, if it is real psychological difficulty, I would really encourage to be able to see a social worker or a psychologist. Hopefully that helps you. I'm also very aware that there's another psychologist online as I'm reading through the chat. So I am more than happy to have your input as well. I would deeply respect that if you have anything that you could share with this community. Thanks, Claire. If I just going to put you out there. There she is. And
I
thank you.
unmuted myself. Yes.
Ah, great. Yeah.
Yes, I'm in the dark. Thanks, Angie. That was great. I guess, yeah, I guess just to, I guess to validate my own and everyone else's experience of, and your own by the sounds of things, of wearing multiple hats. And so I guess I was attending tonight as a parent and not a psychologist, because I was just aware of how we get hooked on things, because I was like, oh, is my child on track? I need to know that she's on track. And then I was like, oh, attachment. Yeah, okay, that's important. But with Noah starting this year, and like she's one of the youngest kids, so I know some of the new parents, and I guess just my own anxiety around, you know, her struggling to settle. And, you know, like sometimes when she gets angry at drop off and she's like, no, mama, don't leave. You know, and I guess as the teachers know that, yeah, she's struggled a little bit to sort of start school, and drop off has been hard. And I guess it's just brought up, yeah, some of my own anxieties, and I guess for parents to also reflect on their own attachment style, you know, that to think around, I guess, the parenting we received, and even as adults, what our attachment style is. So all those attachment styles would also be relevant to adult relationships, you know, for people to think around, how do we relate to our partners or our parents still, even if we're adults. And then also to think that some of, you know, our stuff can be triggered by our children as well, you know.
Yes.
So also sometimes me looking at Noah and thinking, oh my goodness, does she have insecure attachment? But yeah, so mostly just to kind of normalize that for everyone, that, you know, it's also a struggle for us, and to be aware of our own attachment styles, and to also, I guess, be thoughtful around our own childhoods and the parenting we received.
Thank you so much for your input, Sarah. That was really helpful. I appreciate your openness as per usual, and your vulnerability, even on this platform. So thank you.
Thank you, Angie. I think a couple of people have only just managed to join us, so they're going to have to watch the recording to be able to ask you any questions. But it was really nice to have you back talking. And
Thank you so much.
Maybe we'll have to get you back again for a follow-up talk. It was really nice. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. And yeah, have a good evening further. And I hope you
Thank
all
you, everyone.
out of the load shedding soon. Should be off again on again for you at 8, should it? Claire, when does your load shedding go until?
Yes, I should actually, I think we're on till 10 tonight. Well, off till 10.
No, really? Are we back into that schedule? Oh dear. I thought it was still just 2 hours. Oh dear, I haven't been keeping up with it. Anyway, thank you very much again, Angie, and good night to everyone. Thank you for coming.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.